The Beyond the Fame podcast is fed by Lido Pizza. Lido Pizza never cuts corners. For menu and locations, visit LidoPizza.com. And of course, this podcast would not be possible without our longtime title sponsor, the Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races in West Virginia. September entertainment includes Steel Panther on September 12th and the Gen X Comedy Takeover Tour on September 13th, followed by ZZ Top on September 14th and comedian Matt Matthews the weekend of September 19th. Details and tickets at HollywoodCasinoCharlestown.com. Must be 21 to enter the casino floor and attend a show. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. The 77th Annual Emmy Awards honor TV's best this Sunday night on CBS and Paramount+. I spoke to music composer Antonio Sánchez, who's nominated for scoring the Apple TV Plus comedy series The Studio starring Seth Rogen. We also break down his 5 Grammy wins for his prolific jazz career, and how he created the music for the Oscar-winning film Birdman, written and directed by Alejandro González Iñárritu. Hey, Antonio Sánchez. Hey, thank you so much for joining the show today.
Thank you for having me, Jason. A pleasure to be here.
Where are you calling us from? Did I hear you were in Spain?
I am in Spain and 25 minutes north of Barcelona.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm jealous of that, but thank you so much for taking the time to call all the way across the pond. Wow, technology is amazing.
Honestly.
But hey, we are talking to the 5-time Grammy-winning composer Antonio Sánchez, of course, of Birdman fame and so many other great stuff, because you are currently nominated for the Apple TV Plus series, The Studio, at the Emmys on Sunday, September 14th on CBS. So congrats on your first ever Emmy nomination. I personally love the show. You got some tough competition with Andor, Cobra Kai, Severance, White Lotus, and what's the other one? Based on a True Story. But yeah. What was your reaction when you heard the news that you got nominated?
Well, I'm always in a little bit of disbelief, when this kind of stuff happens, especially because I'm kind of an accidental film scorer. It's not my main thing in a way.
Yeah.
There's people that have been doing it for many, many years, and they have so much stuff under their belt. And I have some things under my belt, but I still feel like I'm a baby in this. So I'm incredibly just thankful and proud that people checked out the work and they liked it.
Yeah, you have a legendary music career that even precedes the movie and TV stuff. And we'll get to that. We'll get to some of that in a minute. But while we're talking the studio and the nomination, do you have a favorite cameo? Because in the one or the single take episode, you get Sarah Polley directing Greta Lee, and they're getting frustrated to have to start over again. You have Ron Howard refusing to edit down his movie, sort of going against type. You usually think of him as a nice guy. In this, he's a SOB. It's hilarious. Zoe Kravitz not thanking Seth Rogen at the Globe. My personal favorite is Martin Scorsese wanting to do a Jonestown Massacre movie, and Seth Rogen, he has the Kool-Aid IP, and he's like, let's combine it and make Jonestown a Kool-Aid movie.
That whole scene is so good, and of course, I've been a Scorsese fan for so many. We all have,
Of course, yeah.
You see him act so much
Yeah.
in something and being so funny and so cringy, and then his nervous breakdown at the end. And it's the first episode too.
Yeah.
So that was the first one I got, and I was like, oh my God, this is so amazing. And that was one of the most fun scenes to score, basically, because with the I become really good at doing it with the drums. When I did Birdman 10 years ago, I had no clue what I was doing. I was just, following my instincts, and that's exactly what Iñárritu wanted me to do. But now I have a whole system, and it's a science for me, and I know how to do it, and I know how to do it very effectively. Effectively meaning that it's going to really help out the dialogue and the movement, the cinematography, which is basically what you want a good score to be. So in terms of that one, I really got into the dialogue. I studied the scenes a bunch, and then I mark. Well, this is what I do with all my scenes, but I mark them up on Pro Tools on my program, and I mark up the most important moments where something needs to happen, and something can mean nothing,
Yeah.
uh, which is very effective too. When I just leave space for the word to stand out,
Yeah.
you know. So I love playing, and what I do is I'll watch the episode a bunch of times, then I watch every scene a bunch of times, and then I start marking it, and then I start doing improvisations on top of it just to see what fits better. And I'll try different feels, different beats, different tempos until I settle on one, and then I do a few takes of that one. Now that I know the scene really well, then I know, okay, which when dynamics for me is very important. So when does it get louder? When does it get softer? When do I leave space for that word, important word to stand out? And once I have like a master drum track, then I start editing it, cleaning it up, making sure that it's really, really the best of maybe three that I did. And then I start adding stuff on top of that. Maybe I'll do another take where I'm just playing brushes. I'll do another take where I'm playing mallets for
Yeah.
different, textures. I'll do another take with my hands. And then all of a sudden you have this composite of a bunch of different uh, sounds, but it's all a drum set with percussion in it. And then all of a sudden it just starts sounding like this monstrous kit that you can't exactly tell why it's sounding like that, because if you hear just the original drum set, then it sounds very bare. But when I start adding the other stuff, for example, if I did the first take with the main drum set, and then I left space for this word to come out, maybe I'll do a brush flurry right on that space. And then it just gives it a different color. Anyway, so these are things that I like to try. And
Yeah.
that scene with Scorsese, if you listen closely, I'm like going with every word, just a little sound. He actually did something when he says it's about America. It's like three things that he mentions, and I actually went with all his arm movements as well. So anyway, little things that are very subtle that I notice. I don't know if everybody noticed them, but I think in the end, it just makes the score very interactive, and it kind of makes it like another character that is just hanging with Scorsese
With
and stuff
Marty, you can call him Marty now because you're
with
you're
Marty.
be- you're besties now. But hey, you were nominated specifically for episode four, the missing reel. If folks forget which one that is, that was when Olivia Wilde is directing the neo noir detective film, and they go over budget and they suspect Zac Efron of stealing the reel and the Chateau Marmont, all that stuff. It's a memorable episode. But go into the musicology of the creation of that specific score. What were you going for?
Well, it was I guess must have been the hardest one of the 10 episodes
Yeah,
because they wanted something completely different. I think to me the hardest thing to find when you're doing a series, especially or a movie for that matter, is to find the thing. Okay, what is the thing gonna be for the movie or for the series? In the case of Birdman, it was drums, obviously. In the case of the studio, there's a lot of drums, but they also wanted a lot of other things. And also, I've been wanting to stir away from drums as much as possible because obviously I'm the drum guy. So I want to also be seen as just not the drum guy.
right.
So when they told me about this episode, they said, just a heads up, this is going to be completely different. It's shot differently. It has a different vibe, blah, 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 blah. So I was like, cool, well, let's check it out. So
You
they
go
said,
back and listen to other noirs like Jerry Goldsmith's amazing Chinatown score, or anything. You know what I mean? Are you going back and listening to some of the great noir composers of the past?
absolutely. Well, one of the things they did is that my amazing musical editor, uh, Lorena, she sent me, who is also nominated, by the way.
Oh,
She sent me the temp score, and she had mixed in this Jerry Goldsmith
mm,
with my drums somehow, which I was blown away. I was like,
wow.
how? That's Jerry Goldsmith, but that's me playing drums with Jerry Goldsmith, which completely blew me away. I have
Oh
no idea.
man, that is all-time stuff.
Jerry Goldsmith stuff was incredibly involved, and of course, you need a full orchestra to really get to that. And I had previous conversations with Seth and with Evan about, if we're gonna need to do other things, I'm probably gonna have to do the ball myself because, you know, we don't have a budget for an orchestra unless you want it, but we just don't have it. And they're like, no, 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 we're totally cool. I don't think they were thinking ahead so much in terms of this episode. But when it came up, I was like, oh, well, I have to remind them that it's just gonna be me. And I talked to them, and then they were like, "Oh yeah, yeah, of course, man. Just do your thing. This was just a guide, so just do your thing." So then the hardest thing, like I said, is just to find the thing. What is it going to be? I don't want to be copying Jerry Goldsmith and sound like a bad version of Jerry Goldsmith because that would be dangerous and very depressing. So I just decided I have to do my own thing. But they told me we want the second half to be the noir part. The first half, I think we can do our usual thing that we've been doing, which is very drum and percussion centric with the different elements, some piano, some bass that I put in there, and every now and then, but especially a lot of layering of drums. So I did that, and then I found the thing for the second half of the episode, which is basically the motif, the melody, but then that was one, and then so I,
They
I
should have
thought
just done you humming. Why you don't even need instruments. You could have just hummed it like that. That was perfect. That's spot on.
that's how musicians work usually.
No, I actually, in all seriousness, I appreciate it on podcasts because people, you know what I mean? Sometimes you're gonna hum it and then they go, "Oh yeah, I remember that now." Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just those two little musical cells that once you find it, and that's the hardest thing to find. Once you find it and you like it, you're like, okay, this I can work with. And then I started, composing the second half using that motif, making sure that was highly audible, and that was going to be the recurring thing that we would be going to. That was going to be the theme of that episode.
I love it.
So I was pretty happy with it. And then I sent it back, and then they saw it. And then I think they thought, well, basically, I'm not thinking they thought this is what they thought because they told me. They said, well, now we really love the second half, but now it seems like the first half seems very empty in comparison. So now we want everything also in the beginning. So I had already done all the drums for that. So then I started trying to see if all this stuff that I had done would also fit with the drumming that I had done previously. And I just started kind of using the same motifs and the same melodies and one of the things that I like the most about composing is how you tell a story and how you can squeeze with just a few notes. You can squeeze I'm such a fan of Mozart for that. I actually studied classical music in school, and we would analyze a lot of his scoring, and it was just amazing to see that with just a few notes, bam, ba bam, ba da ba 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 bam, bam, ba dam, ba da ba 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 bam, and then the development,
You
development, development,
you
and
might have heard that one, folks. You may have heard that before.
yeah, that one, one of his lesser known tunes. Let's be
Yeah,
honest.
yeah. Thanks for going to obscure one.
Yeah.
No, he's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, so you know, I'm so inspired by that kind of stuff, or Keith Jarrett improvising, but it's the same thing. I now I realize many years later that motivic development, it doesn't matter if it's classical music with Mozart or jazz with Keith Jarrett or a children's song, is just all the same thing. All great music has a hook that you need to remember, and then you develop it. So
Absolutely.
then I started grabbing this couple of hooks that I had created, and then I started putting them in the first half of the episode, and I could see that it was easily gonna work. They even wanted like a very nice, cool sounding blues in the beginning while they're looking at the dailies. And even in that blues, I snuck in all the same material. So that's the thing. Depending on the context, you can get away with it not sounding monotonous because you're using it in different tempos, different instrumentation, different keys. So then that was basically it. I just started filling in the blanks, the first half now, and then the things that didn't quite fit with the drums, then I of course I redid, but mostly everything fit with the tempos and the things that I had chosen for the first half anyway.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thanks for such a deep dive into the musicality of it. I mean, our aspiring composers are gonna eat that up. And if, I should say, you mentioned Seth and Evan, so we're talking, of course, the show's creators, Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, his writing partner. I mean, they've become so in demand in Hollywood these days. It's been great to see. Seth started Freaks and Geeks, and I remember him in 40-Year-Old Virgin and Knocked Up and all that stuff. But since with Apple, he's now acting in Platonic. Season 2 just dropped, and the studio, of course. He's crushing it. So give us a little more insight into Seth. We see him as this goofy, lowbrow comedy guy from his past work, but he's a deeper thinker probably than a lot of people expect. He's a true filmmaker these days. It's pretty impressive, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. And especially, I think because I've even read a lot of interviews about the show because I was also very interested in what was in their head when they were creating this.
Yeah.
And I think they're kind of both blown away by how much they've grown as filmmakers, and conceptualists and screenwriters, and everything is just so top notch in this show. And I think it has the amount of nominations that it does because they are very serious filmmaking people. You can tell with this. So I was just incredibly flattered that I was called to do this. The way it worked, it was that my agent told me, somebody told me that it looks like Seth and Evan are doing this new series. It's called, at that point, it was called Funk City. And they've been using a lot of your Birdman music to temp it,
Uh,
and it seems like it's really working. So we're probably going to get a meeting or something. So I was like, well, let's have that meeting. And I remember us on the road doing Birdman shows because, I go on the road a lot too. And last year was the 10th year anniversary of Birdman. So then we went out and did a bunch of dates in beautiful movie theaters where I recreate the score live because it's just drums, so it's just little old me on stage. And I was doing one of those runs on the West Coast, and then we had a meeting via Zoom, and it was really funny because we sat down and it was both of them. And first thing that they told me was like, "Man, we just want to tell you, Birdman is one of the best movies ever, and we it's one of my favorite films." And as you know, they talk about it in the show a couple of times, especially on episode 2, the Wanner, because obviously the nature of Birdman was to be basically a Wanner.
Yeah, they made it look like Hitchcock's Rope. Obviously, I'm sure there's a couple invisible stitches, but for the most part, it's the illusion of a single take. Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu is a genius for that. You've mentioned Birdman a couple times, so let's go ahead and I freaking love that movie. I know not every. I mean, I guess some people, if they were expecting a typical superhero movie, they were like, "Wait, what is this?" I loved it for that exact reason because to me, it was the art house film avenging the explosion of these endless superhero movies and stuff. It was almost like the antithesis of it, and so I loved it. But go into the drum based score that you did for that. I remember sitting. I was so into your score during the movie. I remember my leg was tapping, and the guy in front of me in the movie theater turned around and said, "Stop kneeing my chair." I was so embarrassed, and so I blame you.
Well, that's a good sign that they stopped tapping.
Yeah,
It just sounded glorious in the movie theater. But
yeah.
Iñárritu just called me out of the blue, and we had met before because I played with Pat Metheny which is for those who don't know, is an incredible guitar player who has I think like 23 Grammys at this point.
And you
And
won. You won three with him,
I won
right?
3 with him,
Yeah.
yeah,
Speaking of now, the Way Up and Unity Band.
yeah,
But yeah.
you know your stuff. So yeah, he was a very big fan of Pat's. He's been for a long time, and th this is it's one of those circular stories that is really interesting because when I was a teenager listening to radio in Mexico, there was one station in particular called 96.9 uh, radio WFM. And one of the DJs was none other than Alejandro González Iñárritu. And they played some of the
No
hip.
way. Wait,
Yeah,
Inarritu was a DJ at the
yeah,
Mexican radio station that you
that
listened
was
to.
his gig before he
Holy crap, I
became
didn't know
Iñárritu.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. So like
And
before Amores
Amores
Perros? Yeah,
Perros
yeah.
before all of that. Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Yeah, so and I was a fan, because I thought they played the hippest music around then on the radio, and I didn't have a CD player in my car or anything, so I was just listening to that station all the time, and I discovered a lot of really good music. And then they also had a nightly show where they played slightly more jazzy stuff, more sophisticated stuff.
Mhm.
And one night I'm listening, and this song comes on, and I'm blown away by it because I'm like, wow, I was a rock and roller back then, I was just
Yeah.
I had my rock bands and stuff, but this sounded way more sophisticated, but I loved it. So I waited till the end of the tune to see if they would say who it was, and then a voice came on. I don't know if it was Alejandro's, but there was a voice that came on and said, "This was the last train home by the Pat Metheny group." I was like, "Oh wow, the Pat Metheny, that's so cool!" And then I started, the trying to get more stuff because this was pre-platforms, obviously pre-streaming, so you actually had to go to the store and look for the records. And I became a fan of the Pat Metheny group. Then I moved to the United States in '93, went to Berklee College of Music, moved to New York in 1999, and in 2001 I got the gig with the Pat Metheny group. So then we started touring all over the world, and then in 2005, I played with Pat Metheny for 23 years, and we were in 2005 at the Universal Amphitheater in Los Angeles, and we were playing this amazing piece of music that they wrote called "The Way Up." The whole show was maybe an hour and a half, no, 3 hours 15, the whole show. So I was always incredibly tired by the end. I was super sweaty. It was very intense, uh, technically, mentally, physically. And I remember that night they told me, "Oh, there's going to be this after party. There's going to be some cool people coming backstage. So, make sure you're there." And of course. But after the show, I was trying to get to my dressing room, and there was already an after party in the backstage, and I was all sweaty, and I was just trying to get back to my dressing room to change. And then I feel the hand on my shoulder, and I turn around, and I'm like, "Damn, I don't want to talk to anybody right now because I'm all sweaty and tired." But I turned around and there's this guy, and he says, "Man, I just want to say I'm from Mexico too. I know you're from Mexico, and I'm so proud that a Mexican is playing with one of my favorite bands, the Pat Metheny Group." I'm like, "Oh, cool, cool, dude." But I was really kind of trying to get away.
Right.
But he was nice enough that I was like, "Well, this guy knows a lot about music and a lot about the Pat Metheny Group." So I stayed and started talking to him. And at one point, I asked him, "So what do you do?" And he said, very non-assumingly, he said, "I direct films and commercials." And I said, "Oh yeah." So anything I would have seen, thinking, everybody directs films and commercials in
Right.
LA, so probably I haven't seen anything. And then he said, "Well, I did this thing, Amores Perros, on 21 grams." And I was like, "Oh my God,"
Your
I
jaw
almost,
hits the ground. Like I
yeah,
love
swallowed my
the
tongue. And I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm
Oh,
so
you're that guy.
yeah, and I just apologized
Yeah.
profusely. I gave him a hug, and he was super cool. I was like, didn't recognize him. I just didn't recognize him. And then since then, he was super cool. We hit it off, and then fast forward, I don't know how many years, 2005 to 2013. Yeah, so 8 years, I think it was, or 12. So he, out of the blue, he called me and he said, "Man, I remember you from that night. You did a solo that he kept saying the word octopus, pulpo. You were like a pulpo, and man, I'm thinking of doing my new film. It's gonna be a dark comedy, and comedy and rhythm go together. And I'm thinking, a drum score would be great. Would you want to tr give it a try?" And I'm like, "Of course, man. I mean, it would be an honor." And he said, "I'll send you the script." And of course, I was incredibly honored. And 5 seconds later, after I hung up the phone, I was terrified. I was like, "I've never done a film score in my life. And the first thing I'm going to do is with Iñárritu. It's crazy." So he sent me the script, actually the physical script. I remember it. And I got to New York and I was like, oh, fine, I'm gonna read it. I started reading it, and if you've seen the movie, it's a weird movie. So,
It's wonderfully weird.
but it was so weird with read on the script, and I've had no experience reading scripts or anything. So I was like, oh my God, this seems so weird. And then you're gonna put drums on top of that, and maybe this is gonna be a disaster. I was really second guessing at this point, Iñárritu's
Trust the
Iñárritu's
genius.
choices.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously you have to trust what he's doing. And then he asked for some demos. I sent him some demos trying to be very cerebral. And he called me a couple of days later, man, thank you for your demos. They're beautiful, they're awesome, but they're exactly the opposite of what I'm looking for. Like, oh my God, so I have no idea what you want from me then. And he said, well, I just want you to improvise. I just really want you to improvise. Super spur of the moment, organic. He gave all this words that made me think, okay, I think I'm gonna be okay because he seems like he wants me to do what I know how to do really well, which is just react to something. It can either be to a piano solo, or in this case, it's gonna be, something that I'm looking at and a plot. So it was a very cool way to do it because before they started filming the film, we went into a studio and we did everything with the script from the first scene to the last. And he would explain each scene to me in great detail. As you know, they're long scenes because that's what they were going for. And I asked him, please sit right in front of my drums. Let's imagine the scene together. I and when you see the next phase of the scene in your head, please raise your hand so that I know that, okay, now he opened the door and now he's walking down the hallway.
Oh, that's fascinating to me, real quick, because most movies, they shoot it and then, you score the music to the movie after the fact. But I guess because he was going for the long single take idea, you had to go in with just the script and record the score before so they could time it. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, we did the whole thing like that. Then he superimposed it on the rough cut of the film once that they had shot it. Then they brought me to LA, they showed me what they did, and he had a very clear idea of what had worked and what hadn't worked. And the plan was for us to go back into the studio and then redo everything, but now they edited a lot of it on the rough cut, so they really knew what they were going for. So then I went back into the studio and we did everything, but now looking at the film and being a lot more aware of what was happening actually, visually, because the first time I was flying blind basically, and so what you hear in the final product and the final cut is a little bit of the first demos in some places, and mostly the second session, which only lasted a day and a half. So we did everything in a day and a half on the second session, and maybe 3 hours on the first session.
Wow, this is so fascinating how it sort of inverted the process, and then you would rescore to your own thing. That's great insight. Thanks for those stories. Of course, the movie itself wins 4 Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Director, and that was an amazing achievement that year. It was such a strong year because you all beat Richard Linklater's Boyhood, another masterpiece, Ava DuVernay's Selma, great movie, and Damien Chazelle's Whiplash. It was stacked that year. And speaking of Whiplash, as a drummer, I gotta ask you, were you rushing or were you dragging?
I tend to play on top.
I bet J.K. Simmons scared you though, throwing those cymbals. You were like, oh God.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm glad I didn't go to that school. It's
Great performance. But yeah, I mean, what else can we say about Birdman in closing? I mean, I guess I should at least mention the cast. I mean, Michael Keaton is satirizing Batman with Birdman and running around naked in Times Square and stuff. You got Ed Norton, Emma Stone before she wins her 2 Oscars. This is an early, nomination for Emma Stone. I love that last shot when, she looks out the window and thinks the dad's committed suicide, but then the final shot, just you watch her eyes looking up in the air, and it's up to our interpretation, right? Did he jump or did he actually take flight? I love those movies that could be both. But yeah, I mean, have you had any interactions with the cast either during or since where they praised your music?
Well, I mean, I remember the award season because it was all over the place, And I remember I was on tour when I remember it opened in Venice, and I remember because I have to tell you, last thing I saw was the rough cut. the rough cut with the old drums in it. That was the last thing I had seen. And then of course I did the new session, but then I had to leave. I had to go on tour. So I didn't see the finished thing ever. So then my impression, what I had in my head was that rough cut, which they showed it to me in a little TV with terrible sound. So to and I could see some of the splices. There was no color correction. The editing wasn't all there. There were no credits. So it was very rough. So that's what I remember. So when it opened in Venice, I started just reading the reviews because people would send them to me, and they would talk about the score and about the editing. I was like, wow, really? Was it that amazing? I don't remember it being that amazing, to be honest. And then more and more articles were coming out and more great reviews. Though I didn't read one bad review, and it was like catching heat. It was very obvious. So finally, I got home back to New York when I was living in New York back then, and I went to a movie theater with my wife at 2 p.m. to finally watch it. And then we went there. There was not that many people, which that's why we were there at 2 p.m. And then all of a sudden, the lights go off, and then the first thing that I hear is my voice in Spanish that says "Alcancé a hacer eso, se oía," which means I was trying to do that. Did you hear that? And I was like so taken aback that the first thing that you hear in the movie is my voice in Spanish. And then all of a sudden, of course, you hear the drums, and then you start seeing all the letters come alive with the drum hits, and I was just blown away. I had never heard my drums in a movie theater before, and I was just completely blown away. And then because of award season, I got to hang out with a cast a bunch, and everybody was saying the same thing, that it kind of became like another character. And it was really nice when I finally met the cast of the studio very recently, last month when I was in LA. Because being a film scorer is very lonesome. You're in your studio. I'm here in Spain. I send them the stuff, and they approve it or not, and then I keep working. But I had never met anybody, and then I finally went, and then I met everybody at this Apple event. And when I would come up to them and be like, "Oh, I did the music," I remember Bryan Cranston was like, "Oh man," and he gave me a hug, and he was like, "Man, you're like one of the characters."
And your work in Birdman was right when he was doing Breaking Bad.
But I just saw him, like, met him for the first time, yeah, maybe like a month and a half ago in
Yeah.
LA. And he was telling me that the score of the studio, that it also became kind of part of like a character. So hearing that from him, it was just high praise, of course.
Absolutely. Well, between Birdman and the studio, and we mentioned your other three Grammys heading into Birdman, Birdman wins you a fourth for the soundtrack visual medium. And then you even won a fifth, last year, 2024 for Sochi House. So it's not just movies, it's not just TV, it's also recorded music. You've done it all. And I love that people are getting to see different sides of you, from the drumming to the noir score. You're showing so much range, and you're still going. I can't wait to see what you do next. You would have made your grandfather proud. He was a famous Mexican actor, right?
Yes, he was, and he loved Birdman. By the way, he never canceled a show, and I remember he canceled one of his shows to go and see Birdman when I escorted
Wow.
it.
How do you say it? Ignacio Lopez Tarso?
Ignacio Lopez Tarso.
Wow. What's your favorite movie of his? Final seconds.
Macario, and that was the first Oscar-nominated Mexican film ever, and I think it was 1953.
Yeah, that's the year. So he's doing that in Mexico. Ozu's doing Tokyo Story in 53. Zinnemann's doing From Here to Eternity here in 53. What else? Sam Fuller's doing Pickup on South Street. I'm trying to think what else was 53. But every year, there's great movies every year. I could go all day. But that's so cool. You would have made your grandfather proud.
Thank you so
Well,
much. Appreciate that.
thank you so much for joining us. Again, this is composer Antonio Sanchez, who's currently nominated for the Apple TV Plus series, The Studio. The Emmys are going to be Sunday, September 14th on CBS. You can probably stream it on Paramount Plus as well. But best of luck winning. We listed all your other acclaim, but this would be your first ever Emmy win. So I'm rooting for you, man. I'm really rooting for you.
Oh, thank you, Jason. I appreciate that. That would certainly be a very exciting thing to happen. But Like you said, stiff competition, and everybody in that category is amazing. I just admire all of them.
I love it. Well, everybody, this is Antonio Sanchez. Thanks for Birdman. Thanks for the studio. We can't wait to keep following your career and hope you win on Sunday.
Thank you so much.
All right. See ya.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.